I think this is your little simple view of what you need to do. So I'm just saying it again because I was not recording. So go back to this to remember what you need to do. I think it's not too complicated. I think you, again, I don't want to underestimate them, but you should not feel too threatened by the one sheet, maybe a little bit more by the go-to-market, because there's going to be more strategies involved in the go-to-market and forecasting. And this too is really to pace yourself in order to go to the final version of the presentation. If you go in Canvas, not only that, but I forgot to mention, I even put videos of people presenting their final startup reports. So it takes time because each one of them are like 25, 30 minutes. But if you have the curiosity to look at this video, I just want to be honest, if you do look at all the samples I'm providing you, and this video plus the other one I'm going to find an ad in there, you can have a really clear idea, or more clear idea of what is expected from you, and it should be very helpful. Um, Actually, not too concerned because I think you've done very well in my previous classes, but the difference is this time you're going to have to own your own project versus there you were working for someone already existing. And I just want to be honest, is working for someone, a company or brand that already exists, is a lot easier than actually doing it for yourself. So entrepreneurship is maybe 2 times more difficult because you're really starting from zero, from scratch. And so it's sort of, there's so many choices, and eh, and you because it's your own project, which is good, you're going to be very excited about it, very enthusiastic about it. And in some way it's sort of like love makes you blind. And in some way that's where we're going to be, is we're going to keep trying to steer you to the reality of the things that you're saying that may not be as true as you think. So there's a little bit of blindness that comes into the game when you're doing entrepreneurship versus when you're working for someone else, is you're more objective. So that's oftentimes the biggest mistake, even at the end, at the start, when you produce your startup presentation, is it's not really as realistic because you are sort of lying to yourself because you too enthusiastic. And that's what you have to be very careful. And it's the same thing when you present to investors. Investors are very sensitive to energy. Of course, they want energetic people and excited people, but they don't believe it's really as good when they feel that these people are just more excited than realistic. And therefore they worry that these people are not going to be really performing. They are sort of dreamers, and that's what you have to be very careful. um, so entrepreneurship is tremendously growing in the US. Younger people, older people, there's a myth that it's younger people joining entrepreneurship, but not really. People are good to join and become an entrepreneur at any time. If you're young, you are very motivated, you have a lot of energy, you're very enthusiastic, you don't have too many liabilities, too many um, obstacles, too many personal breaks, but you lack of experience. If you're older, 30, 40, 50, you have much more experience, you're more realistic, you're less enthusiastic, but you have more of a common sense maybe for you. You have more connections. Um, you are sort of taking the risk, but you do it with more research. However, you may be lacking the energy and the enthusiasm that a younger person would have. So there's pros and cons from both sides. Personally, I think um, if you were to say, I want to start multiple enterprises, maybe you should be younger to do that. That's my perspective. But if you are starting an enterprise, and I would say, who do I bet is most likely to succeed? Is I would say someone older because they are more sure-footed. Young people tend to dream and to look at things maybe not as realistically as older people. So there's pros and cons, but the age is not the determinant. Women or men, um, the difference I see is I think maybe women in general would be more organized and structured, and men maybe would have some ease from a leadership perspective. I mean, this is just a natural thing. There's more men as leaders, and maybe that's part of the advantage, but they are not as organized, and they are not as focused as well. And also the multitasking that you need to do, I think it works better oftentimes for women. But these are, and a lot of things I'm going to tell you today are sort of true and stereotypes about what entrepreneurs are. There's so many characteristics and skills that you need to have. That's also why it's so difficult to be successful entrepreneurs. So more and more entrepreneurs, you can look at the number of books being produced on the subject of small business and entrepreneurship, the number of programs that are being created throughout the US through universities. It's growing. Entrepreneurship has multiple definitions. So the academic definition is entrepreneurship is the process by which individuals pursue opportunities with regard to resources they currently control. So that's an academic definition, but you could find practitioners that who also believe in that definition. Then you have a venture capitalist definition is entrepreneurship is the art of turning an idea into a business. So obviously you see the word opportunity, you see the word idea here. Which one is more important? Well, they're both important, and essentially I created a third definition, which is entrepreneur assemble and then integrate all the resources needed, the money, the people, the business model, the strategy, to transform an idea supported by opportunities into a viable business. So my opinion, which you've heard many, many times, is that you should not run with an idea in order to create a business. You should identify opportunities to support your ideas in order to create your business. So, and always, if almost you could say, imagine a circle, and I haven't designed that, where half of the circle would be ID, the other half of the circle would be opportunities, and then around the circle is you would have like a corridor, and inside this corridor you would have research, and research will be spinning around this too. I just thought about this right now because it spins, research spins around the idea, research spins around the opportunity, you're looking for them and you're creating some basis. So what is the one sheet? You want to know what's inside the one sheet? Well, inside the one sheet is your SWOT analysis. All right. So if you do a SWOT analysis, you've done 90% of the one sheet, the first document. So the first presentation essentially is going to be the presentation of your ID, and then the presentation of the SWOT, and then the presentation of what you think the potential of the market is. That's the first step, is to be able to say, this is our ideas, this is what the business is going to be about, and why is it going to work? Because of these opportunities. Who are the competitors? What are the main change? What is the environment? So that's why essentially I believe that the marketing class is very important in order to become a good entrepreneur, because that's the basis and the foundation of being a good entrepreneur. But
I
then you can be, yes,
sorry, I have a question.
yes,
So when it comes to competitors, if you see the opportunity, you did all your research there, but like you're trying to learn more about the competitors, because like I'm kind of having trouble with that. Like I know who the competitors are, but like
yes.
how would you, like, if it's like a website or an app, you can't just like figure out what their users, not only like how many visitors they have, that you can get some of that, but like you can't get what their users are doing, or if they like it, maybe some reviews or something. Like how do you get the most detailed information on your competitors and what they're doing?
So, so the easiest, I mean, one very important and valid step is to ask consumers their experience with your competitors, and what do they like about them and what they don't like about them. What's missing? What's the J&D that is missing? So again goes research, and then the research will focus on the J&D of your company towards your competitors based on consumer needs. And that J&D then becomes the opportunity as well. What you found that the consumer wants and that is missing and they are not getting from anyone in the market. And that becomes your J&D. And then that J&D becomes the formula for your success until your competitors copy your J&D, just noticeable difference. And once your competitors copy your J&D, they may succeed or not, because it's not enough to just copy a J&D. They have to create also a noticeable difference on what they've copied from you.
Okay.
So it's this constant adaptation where the one that succeeds is the one that finds the best behavior in the environment in order to last and to excel and to thrive. So entrepreneurship is really great for those people that have this mindset, which is there's always a better solution. They're constantly looking for this betterment. So now talking about this, what's very important is entrepreneurship is a tough space for perfectionists in the most part. There's some area where perfectionists can excel, but for the most part, being a perfectionist it goes against the entrepreneur if this person is a perfectionist. I don't know if you remember, there was a video that I showed you last time. It was a video from this billionaire from CSUN. He was an older gentleman, and he was a billionaire from CSUN. I forgot his name. Pena, yes, Mr. Pena. And he became a billionaire by doing all kinds of different businesses. He owned um, multiple businesses, and he was involved in so many huge deals and so forth. And inside this, he talked about the young people that he loved working with the young people, and he called them my kids. Remember, he was sort of this personality. And he said, my kids, I like to work with them, but what I don't like is when they wait to make decision and they're scared of making decisions because they think I'm going to be upset with them. I'm upset when they don't make decisions, because if they don't make decisions, we don't go anywhere. I want them to make constant decisions and then make decisions to adjust the decision that they made by finding um, changes and finding that it doesn't work. So the worst thing is when people are scared of making decisions, and worst thing is when they are trying to be perfectionists. And he says the engineers are perfectionists. And it's funny because I've been saying that many years before I found out of Mr. Pena. Is just I have the same exact opinion. Is engineers can make very good entrepreneurs, but sometimes engineers are dangerous because they look for perfection when in fact we are not trying to serve perfection, is we're serving the needs of a customer. Perfection is perfectly serving their needs. Perfection is not making things perfect in the eyes of an engineer, right? Because the engineers, they have all of that knowledge. They have this bias of them knowing exactly what is going on. You know, I feel like saying a little bit is there's a lot of doctors that don't take any medicine. I've met a lot of doctors, and you say, hey, do you take any medicine? No, 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 no. You prescribe a lot of medicine? Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But you don't take any medicine? No, 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 no. And then you go, why? Well, I know what's inside. And so an engineer is a little bit the same. They know so much about engineering that when they create a product, it's going to be from the eyes of the engineering and the eyes of this perfection, which is great. That's what we ask them to be. But the business owner is someone whose perfection is to perfectly match customer satisfaction based on what customer wants. So the J&D is not the ideal J&D of some paradise. The J&D is what customers want, is what you're going to create. And then you're going to ask the engineers to exactly create what they want. All right. So I've said this many times now, and I will try to cultivate this mindset. And But it's so much more important than the previous class, because you're going to be judged on you saying, we have this great idea. Okay, who cares if you're great idea? I mean, that's what we're going to think. Don't take it personal. Who cares? Okay, great. What's your great idea? What is the opportunity? What's the support? So remember, in this class, the time that you spent in last class identifying opportunities till the last minute, and there was groups that came to me and said, it's a disaster, we have no opportunities, we're going to crash, all this. That was hard. Now you're going to have to do this for a company that does not exist, that you have to create. It's very difficult. And so you're going to tell us the idea, but we're going to wait for the opportunity, and you're going to be judged and saying, so what is the market? Who are these people? What do they want? Why do they care? Why does anyone care for what you have to offer? Entrepreneurship is not something that you can fake. Entrepreneurship is real. Is people care, you exist. Nobody cares, you don't exist. Okay? Thank you, Aaron, for your question.
Thank you for your response. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? So now a little myth I want to break is when people hear about entrepreneurship, and that's something I remember when I was a student, it was a wow moment, because I used to think that entrepreneurship was this person that is young and is going to start a new business. And entrepreneurship was about starting new businesses. And that's true for the most part. But when you learn about entrepreneurship, you learn about being entrepreneurial. And being an entrepreneurial is entrepreneurship. But being entrepreneurial doesn't mean that you're starting. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. Entrepreneur is a French word. So that's why a lot of people have a hard time spelling it. It's not an English looking word, it's a French looking word. The EUR at the end and all that. So what does entrepreneur, now I can give it to you. I have a pretty good French accent. An entrepreneur. What's an entrepreneur? Let's start from the basic. What's an entrepreneur?
I guess somebody who starts a business from scratch.
Okay, so an entrepreneur, yeah, and that's what I was trying to avoid, is it doesn't have to be from scratch. An entrepreneur, it comes from the word entreprendre. Entreprendre, translation, is to do something. So if you want, an entrepreneur, translated in English, is a doer. The only thing is if you put on your business card entrepreneur and you give it to someone, people look at it and go, wow. If you put on your business card doer, people are not going to find it too cool. So people call it entrepreneur. It sounds more sexy than doer. But an entrepreneur is a doer, is someone that does something. Okay, so to entreprendre is doing things. What is the word leader in French? Leader. So you see, you took a word, entrepreneur, and we took one in English, leader. Isn't that funny? So we use leader, which is an English word, which means someone that leads, someone that is in the front, someone that people follow. So that's the English word. And entrepreneur is just simply doing. So that's why when you hear it in English, you think it's someone that starts businesses, they come up with an idea and they have a dream and they start doing it. But the translation in French is just someone that does things. So why is this very important? Is because to be an entrepreneur is you have to do things. The number of people that say that they are entrepreneurs, but then you ask them how many hours there is in the day. 24. Are you sure? Yes. How many hours do you do something really? And then they go 2 3. Now if there's 24 hours, you need to do things for more than 10 to be a doer. If you do less than 10, you're not a doer, you're just entertaining. It's not serious. An entrepreneur is someone that does, is a work person and constantly coming up with things and doing things. So, and that's what I discovered many years ago when I took this class in the early 90s. is I thought entrepreneurs were people that just had to start businesses. You're going to learn how to start businesses. Wrong. If there is entrepreneurial activities, which is like if tomorrow you go work for Universal, Universal existed before you joined them. Can you be an entrepreneur in Universal? Yes, because you are entrepreneurial. Means that you're doing things. You're a leader of doing things. So it's called uh, intrapreneurial. Intrapreneurial is people that are doing things in existing company, intrapreneurial. And there are these um, businesses that are essentially very innovative. You know, you hear all the time about big businesses buying smaller businesses. And one of the reasons they do that is to get rid of a competitor. Another reason they do that is also to acquire the entrepreneurial innovations that the small businesses do. Small businesses, because they're small and they're made of entrepreneurs, they're constantly doing, creating, doing, creating, doing, creating. Some of that is successful, and therefore big businesses go and they just watch. And when they see it's good, okay, let's buy out this company because they've been doing and creating a lot. And we're not capable of doing that much. The big businesses, they're good at mass communication, mass production, mass distribution, but not micro creation and fostering incentives and innovation. That's the small businesses. Okay. Do you have any questions or comments or anything?
Like Pablo said in the chat, if you have a 9 to 5 and you have a passion, you got to put another 8 hours after you clock out into that passion in order for it to come true.
That's right. That's right. Yes, you and Pablo are very right, because you can't say because I work so hard, I will be successful. You can't expect it. It's not an expectation, but it's more likely to be this way. What you can be sure, you see, I'm not sure that if you spend 20 hours working every day for 6 years, your business will be successful. I am not sure. But what I'm sure is someone that doesn't put the time is not going to be successful. There's no miracles, right? So working very hard is very important. And entrepreneurship is about this. So entrepreneurial firms are therefore proactive, innovative, and risk-taking. They're not thinking entrepreneurship is just for uh, small businesses starting. You know, it's like you could say, I'm the owner of Tesla, and I am an entrepreneur. I'm the owner of Amazon, of Hewlett Packard, of very established businesses, and that you are an entrepreneur. It's essentially means that you are someone that is good as doing things, moving things, starting things, leading to new projects. It's like injecting new blood in the company and constantly innovating, constantly looking at the changes, constantly working on the, the adaptation of your company to survive, constantly thinking that you are in a position of, of, um, of risk. The other day, I was listening to Warren Buffett, and I was amazing for Warren Buffett to say that, but it explains a lot of the reason why he became one of the most successful business person in America. Is he was saying is you should never be comfortable. You should never think that you're comfortable, even if you're number one. Is you should constantly even lie to yourself, saying that you're at risk. I'm at risk. I'm not comfortable. I'm not stopping. It's But you don't want to be someone that says it's never enough. That's not what he was saying. Is you can't be complacent. You can't be thinking that you're set, because that's happens a lot of time. Is you do a business, it doesn't work very well, it works better, then you get successful, then you get the number one, and then you see this in sports, the same thing. And then you're there and you think that's it, I made it. And then you lose. But you lose because you became too comfortable. So Warren Buffett, when asked, who are the best business people for you? He said, there's three traits that I look for in a good business person, someone that I hire. And that was Warren Buffett saying that. He said, number one, integrity and honesty. If there's no integrity and honesty, this person is going to be not good. And you can't have a long-term relationship. Number two, intelligence. So you don't want, intelligence doesn't mean IQ. Intelligence, it just means that they get it, they learn, they make mistake, they don't do the mistake again. They have this intelligence to work with people, to communicate and all this. And then the third thing was energy. People with energy. And energy is not like they look at a crystal ball and they go, wow. Energy is people that are, they just are alive. They have, there's strength in them. They're not all the time sick and saying, I'm so tired and I don't know, today is a bad day and all this. They're just energetic people. So that's why also integrity is so important, because if you get someone that is intelligent, energetic, and doesn't have integrity, they're going to put a lot of intelligence and energy to screw you. So you better make sure that they have integrity, because otherwise they're going to use their bad mindset in order to take advantage. So I think these are three very important characteristics. And when I heard that, and I've been in business for a long time, I went like, wow, that's so true. Those three things are so important. This older gentleman has so much experience that he's totally nailed the three characteristics of people you want to do business with. Conservative firms is wait and see posture. Um, it's just, what are the competitors doing? Can we learn something from the competitors? Is there something going on overseas that we could borrow and bring to the US? So it's constantly looking for taking old recipe and or working recipe, but not having much leadership in coming up with things, being less innovative. So that's one thing that I want to say again. That was a strong message that I gave you in my marketing class, which was that marketing is for people that take charge. And that's what I think is wonderful, is if you want to take charge, if you like taking charge, marketing will suit you. No. Entrepreneurship, you could be a good marketer that doesn't take too much charge, because you could be sort of conservative marketer. Why not? But that doesn't pay. Eventually, AOL pretty much disappeared. Eventually, MySpace pretty much disappeared versus Facebook, versus Apple. All of these were successful because they were entrepreneurial. They existed. Facebook didn't exist, but Apple existed for a long time, and it was sort of revived by someone being an entrepreneur. So you have to think like this, taking leadership. Leadership is very, very important, where you say, you know what? I love the world. I love people. What can I do? What is my contribution to this world? What can I do to help people? I want to help people. I want to come up with a solution that's going to make it better for people. And why am I saying that? It's because there's a lot of people that think entrepreneurship is for financial reward. I want to be an entrepreneur. Why? Because it sounds good. I want to be an entrepreneur because I'm going to get rich faster. I want to be an
Can I ask you a question,
Yes.
Dr. V? As far as like making excuses, I didn't hear you mention that at all in regards to an entrepreneur. You might as you move forward, but
Yeah.
I mean, can an entrepreneur be successful always, making excuses for, instead of finding solutions to whatever hurdle might present itself, whether that be financial or whatever. That's just a question I have for
Well,
you.
it's
as it
true. So,
pertains.
so let's say you're someone that is very predatory, someone that looks at the situation and you see opportunities to take advantage of a situation by offering a solution that may not even work, but it sounds good. So you can be an entrepreneur by taking advantage of people, like a snake oil seller. You sell snake oil, right? It doesn't work, but people are, you can do that. I Because of the cognac a few years ago, I was very involved with the hip hop industry, and I eventually met Dr. Dre and his family, and I did a number of things with them. And at that time, I heard they were doing this Beats uh, headphone, and I at that time they had like 8 employees, so that was a very very beginning. It was just a small startup. And I asked them where was the J&D, just noticeable difference about Beats by Dre, and they told me the difference is we tell people that the headphone is made for the hip hop genre of music. And I said, is it true? Well, it doesn't have to be true, because true for an engineer is not the same as a true for consumers. So I say, is it true for consumers? Yeah, consumers, that's what they think. So eventually we got several classes. In fact, Mia, the first Mia, was involved in the Beats by Dre, which I actually brought to the office in Santa Monica to Dr. Dre. And I actually had a special bottle of cognac that I brought as well at the same time that I signed. And I left that to his office. And I don't know what happened. And so what was interesting is when the students did the research, they actually found that that headphone for the hip hop was good, but not the best one. I forgot the brand that were the best one, but there was many brands that were better for hip hop from an expert perspective. Sign, Sign Master, or Sennheiser, or whatever. There was many brands.
Sennheiser, AKG, even Sony. I mean,
Yeah,
even Bose.
yeah, Bose. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, this was obviously 8 years ago we did that, and there were so many brands that were better than Beats. And not only that, is that they were cheaper and they existed for a long time, but they did not position themselves as the headphone for hip hop, supported by lots of hip hop people that would say this is the best one and blah blah blah. So that's what Beats did. Is they say it doesn't matter. That's what we're going to tell them, and we're going to have our friends tell everybody, and eventually, if we say it loud enough, long enough, people are going to start believing it. So that's what they did, right? And so obviously that became a very successful. I mean, it was a success story for many, 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 many years until they sold the company to Apple. Or who did they sell it to?
Apple,
Yeah.
3.5 billion.
Yes, they sold it to Apple, and I don't think it's the same anymore. I don't think anyone cares too much for Beats, and they sold it to Apple. Apple is not a loser company, but they
I was about to say, well, I think just like you said earlier, I think what Apple did was buy the technology, gut the company, and use the little intricate parts for their buds to now we walk around with the phones instead of the colorful, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's just I also remember it comes back to me because again, this is like 8 or 9 years ago when we did that. I was I remember the cable that Beats was using is like the most famous cable company for you people in the music,
Monster,
right? Yeah,
monster.
yes, that was the best one. And eventually they had an argument with them and they split it. But apparently the cable they were using in the first versions of the Beats by Dre headphones were really good cable, but the headphone was good, but it was not as good as everyone thought it was. So um, entrepreneurship is not again about creating the best product. Entrepreneurship is really answering people's needs, and people had a need they couldn't wait for someone to tell them that there was a headphone for hip hop. They didn't care if it was true or not true. They didn't even know that's what they wanted to hear. There was no one that came forward and say, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want someone to come and tell me that there's a headphone for hip hop." Nobody could say that. But Beats was created in order to say that. And then when people heard that, they went, "Oh, I want it and I need it and I'm going to buy it and it's going to be more expensive." And that's fine. The number of people that were saying that they like Beats by Dre because you could recognize what brand of headphone people were using because they had bright colors on the logo. You could see it for a distance and it made a statement, was amazing. So then we told people, "Why did you buy it?" I bought it because of the sound." "Are you sure?" "Tone the light down. It's just you and I. Nobody hears. Why did you buy it?" "I bought it because now I have the big logo on the side and everybody think I'm cool." "Oh, okay, so that's the reason." So entrepreneurship is really understanding people's reasoning. Entrepreneurship is giving people what they want. It's being at the right place at the right time, and it's seizing opportunities. Entrepreneurship is about wanting to be a leader. And entrepreneurship is about wanting to take charge. Okay. So it's a doer. You're a doer. That's the first step. You work 10 hours, 12, 14 hours a day. That's the first step. You have the energy. That's very good. You want to be your own boss. Why do you want to be your own boss? "I want to be my own boss because I don't like my bosses. I've never liked my bosses. They are too bossy." Okay, but why? "Well, they tell me when I can take vacation." And so what's wrong with that? I want to decide when I take vacation. That's why I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to decide how much money I'm going to make. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. I want to decide if I go to work today or not. That's why I want to be an entrepreneur. And there's only one way to get rich. It's fast. And therefore, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then these people don't go anywhere because they focus too much on the short term outcomes. And entrepreneurs, for the most part, I'm sorry to say, but it's a long term investment. It doesn't work short term. It's short term, it's going to be a lot of no, a lot of negativism, a lot of doors closing in front of your face, a lot of people thinking you're crazy. And that's how it is. But you don't care what people say. People say things, it doesn't bother you. You have your ID, you have your opportunity, you've done your research. You just know like a spider web. Sometimes I see spiders make spider webs in places and I go, that spider is crazy. There's no ants or no mosquitoes that go in that corner of the wall. Why is that spider spending so much time building that spider web here where I know there's no insect that's going to go there? Then you come back a week after and then you see, wow, there's a lot of stuff in that spider web. How did that happen? Well, that spider was an entrepreneur. That spider decided to go in that corner, put those webs because they've done their study and they just knew that this was their piece of land. This was their moment to do what they wanted with their IDs, and they knew the flow of the air. And I mean, I'm not a specialized person in spiders, so I can't go further than that, but they knew something. Okay, they've done their research. So we have to do our research. So now I'm going to go into the traits of an entrepreneur. And so I just want to give you a little disclaimer before I go into that, because I mean, like I said, there's thousands of books on how to be an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of successful entrepreneurs that tell you to that you're wasting your time if you buy the books. If you're an entrepreneur, you know it. You don't need a book to tell you what to do. That's one side. But then at the end, they tell you, by the way, I just wrote a book, buy my book, after they told you that you don't need to buy a book. So then it's very confusing. Lots of books, lots of characteristics to be an entrepreneur. And essentially, at the end, it's like, gee, you have to be Wonder Woman or Superman to be an entrepreneur because there's so many characteristics. But I think that curiosity is important. I think that ambition is important. I think that drive is important. I think being focused on the customers. I think tenacity, passion, intelligence is very, very important. So there are many different characteristics. There's the fact that you have to be interested in what you're doing. So I think again about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, he seems to be a very humble person. I mean, you can grab so many interviews from him. He's not arrogant. He's not a bragger. He's sort of the typical Nebraska, farmer or son of a farmer or something like this. Very humble, and he does not seem to be someone who's brags or and all of that. So, but what he says is, he says, when I was 8 years old, I love reading, and I read books, and so many books per day. So that served me because now in order to make good investment decision, I have to collect a lot of information. So I'm reading over the place, hours and hours of reading until I have a good feeling about what is going on in the world and in that industry. So it's like secondary data, secondary data, secondary data, existing data, reading, 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 reading. Very important. You don't like to read, it's tough to be an entrepreneur as well because you have to collect information. And so doing research is looking at a lot of things. There are a lot of things you lose time, but you have to look at that. But you have to have a passion for what you do. He says, I became very wealthy being an investor. I don't recommend it to everyone. That was what I loved. When I was 11 years old, I was already in an investment club. How many 11 years old wants to be an investment club? You cannot force yourself. So then he said what his kids are doing. And I think he had a son with a musician, another one with some kind of artist or whatever. And he says they're doing very, very well because they're doing what they love. So this seems maybe like not true, but you have to do what you love because everyone gets tired doing what they don't love. So you have to really think about this. Then you have to be customer focused. So that goes to what I say. It's you satisfying the customer, not yourself. Do what you love, but think about who you are sharing this love with is not the product and the engineers, but it's the customers. You have to have tenacity because it's won't 99.999%. It's not going to work very well, very quick, and people are not going to care. Then execution and commercial intelligence is this idea that you're going to have to be understanding how everything is processed in your environment. What are the shortcuts? Who is key and who you should talk to. So the short path, and also make decisions based on having good sense for how things are going to change in the relationship that you build. This is from Entrepreneur Magazine. I'm only going to go fast because it says the 7 traits of an entrepreneur. Here again, a bunch of traits. There's myth that entrepreneurs are born and not made, that there's a DNA predisposition. Obviously, there's a DNA, some sort of DNA, which is that wanting to be a leader, having the skills to be a leader, being someone that has confidence. I mean, all of these things help, but you can learn to be an entrepreneur by understanding how important those traits are. Traits of doing research. If you are someone that has confidence, someone that has leadership skill, but you don't believe in research, then it's not good. So people don't often naturally believe in research. Maybe I've convinced you this semester and in the last class that research is not done just for the sake of wasting time and money. It's done because that's how you make better decisions. Entrepreneurs, people think they are optimistic, persuasive, self-starter, tenacious, and it's true. What about risk taking? Well, you have a variation. I mean, there's books that says you have to be a risk taker, and there's other people that says that this is not true. It's like a 50-50. Some are risk taking and some are not risk taking. So it's not the number one characteristic, I think, of entrepreneurs. Alert to opportunities, that's very important because that's the key we've talked about. It's for length. Another one is decisive. Decisive is tough. You can't be someone that is procrastinating, someone that is unsure, and someone who is worried about once they make a decision that they're going to feel bad about this decision, not so much about how they feel, but based on what other people are going to think. So they're very influenced by interpersonal beliefs. It's like, if I don't succeed, people are going to think less of me. First, my parents. My parents are going to think I'm a loser. I don't want my parents to think I'm a loser if I fail. If I fail, I'm going to be less than my sister, my brother, my cousins. I'm going to be less than my friends. People are going to look down. Therefore, I can't fail. If you are trying to be an entrepreneur being so scared of failure, you won't succeed.
So that's where all the excuses come in with the indecisiveness then, right?
Exactly. So that's what we were talking about before. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and I talked about this the second week in February, where I was talking about attribution theory. So let me remind you of this because this is very important. Attribution theory is a simple theory that is discussed by all the entrepreneurs, but they don't call it attribution theory because they use what you're just saying, no excuses. You know, you could write a book and it's called No Excuses, the number one way to succeed in business. What's the concept behind that is attribution theory. It's one of my favorite theory, which is that when you do things, you will succeed and you will fail. How do you attribute failures and success is very important. If you have an internal attribution, is you constantly attribute them to you. I succeeded because of what I did. I failed because what I did. Internal attribution. The opposite of that is external attribution. Is I succeeded because of my environment and I failed because of my environment. People who have an internal attribution can do much better because they don't look for excuses. They constantly blame themselves. And if you blame yourself, you can correct yourself. If you blame others, you're diffusing the possibility of fixing the mistake to because of someone else. So I didn't run fast enough to win the championship because of my shoes. Is it just your shoes? I tell you what, um, I've never seen so many students fail since 1995 than in the month of March. So this month of March 2021, I have a class, I have 200 students, and I've taught more than 14,000 students in 26 years. I've seen some success, some failures. I've never seen so many failures as much as in the past 2 weeks. So, and I've been telling that to students. I try to have good rapport with students and telling them, why do you think you fail? I fail, professor, because you don't give enough study guides. I fail, professor, because the last one I got is because my quiz was too short. The quiz was too short. I said, let me tell you something. That quiz, I've given the exact same quiz to 10,000 students since 2001. And students have asked me to change things, and never one person out of 10,000 asked me to make it longer. I've had even students telling me to make it harder. I had 50 people out of 10,000 that asked me to make it harder, which is crazy. And not one that asked me to make it longer. I said, but you know what? I post videos. All my classes, I make videos, I post them. In the class, there's 200. It's kind of strange. On average, I get 25 people to go view my video. Why are they not looking at my video? Only 25 out of 200. How many times do you read the textbook? Once? Twice? 3 times? Do you look at my study guides? Do you take notes? Do you look at the book, read the book, and take notes? And then the students, which has been amazing, is most of the students that came forward and complained to me, eventually they say, last one was yesterday. They say, Professor, I could show you without their name. Professor, I want to be honest with you. I was very emotional when I read your email because you're saying absolutely the truth. It's just the world is so screwed up right now. I have a hard time concentrating. I can't study as much as I used to. I have all of these things in my head. It's not working out and all this. I said, okay, so don't blame the professor or don't blame all of this. Take charge. And then the students send me emails and say, wow, you motivated me in such a way. I'm so excited. You're right. Never a professor came forward and talked to me like this. I'm going to take charge. And I tell them, go Google attribution theory, internal attribution. Start having internal attribution. Look at a guy called Kobe Bryant. Google Kobe Bryant and internal attribution, and then you're going to say, you know Kobe Bryant? Why was Kobe Bryant such a successful sports person? Because of internal attribution. Is he didn't blame anybody. He didn't blame his family, he didn't blame his friends, he didn't blame his coach, he blamed himself. And I can show you a video that's all he talks about, is I only blame myself when it didn't work. When I went and I became a pro basketball player, I was not the tallest. And I know this video, he talked about his hand. He says, I put my hand next to Jordan or some other guy, and he says, my hand was tiny. How could I beat these guys? I was screwed if I was thinking negative like that. And he says, I just work, 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 work. And I made myself better and I did pretty good. Anyway, so that's the point I want to make. Internal attribution is that's the way you get yourself out of the hole. Here's someone that is really good. His name is John Caldwell. John Caldwell is a British guy, and he came from nothing, and he's one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the UK. He created this company called Phones for You, and he talks about what it takes to be a business person.
So he mentioned about reading the market and being able to make quality decisions based on what else is going on around them and the absolutely rare quality or whatever. Can you elaborate on that and talk a little bit about what he is even talking about there?
What happens is that when you go in an environment, there are trends in this environment, and they are key players. There is like a dynamic. And so when you go in this environment is you have to see where you can make changes, how much changes you can make, what's reasonable to think, how the government is going to make changes, who are the people in the government. So it's about relationship and people, consumer cultural changes that people are going to take. You have to be someone that sort of, you see, it's okay to have leadership and get everybody excited and rally around you, but he says leadership is also being someone that can seize the trends because you sense the trends, you sense the things that are going to change, and what you think is going to happen before it happens. And because you have a good sense. I don't know, as an example is investment is like this too, stocks and things, how they change. Since I'm as long as I can remember, I've always been passionate about cars. I've bought and sold many classic cars, and I've done purchase of classic car based on the car that I like, but purchase of classic car based on my belief of how much the value of this car is going to change because of people trends in what they like, and the effect of fashion and the effect of the environment where I live in. So after being such a long time passionate about something, is you can sort of sense the trend, and you can take decisions before everyone does take decisions, because to you it makes sense, and you take the decision just before. So there's quite a few cars that I bought that they were sort of stagnant, and I bought them, and sometime a year after they start going up, or sometime a month after they start going up, and I just knew it. It was the right color, it was the right model. At that time, it was not that desirable, and then it became desirable. So that's what it is. Is you sort of belong in that jungle. You belong in that ecosystem, and you sort of have all the antennas that you know what is going to happen. But that's not just enough. You need to have also the relationship that can help you, because you can't do it by yourself. So you have to be able to connect with the people that are going to help you make it better, bring it to the right channel with the right support, investment support, distribution support, promotion support. And so you have to have this team and this reputation and that special relationship and that special trust. You trust them, they trust you. So that's, I believe, what he was talking about. And
I see what you're saying. Yeah, thank you for articulating.
yeah, so it's hard to really explain it, very objectively. It's you just belong. It's almost like you have your own internal sensor, but it can't be enough. You see, if you do everything based on instinct, extremely dangerous. So you have to have a mixture of instinct and research. You have your own belief, you have research to back it up. It's just a question of how much data do you need in order to have enough confidence. And so if you belong to that jungle, if you belong to that ecosystem, you don't need as much data in order to support your belief. If you don't believe in that system and you're a risk averse person, then you need a lot of data. And that data is never going to be enough, because if that data is enough, that means everybody else is doing it. And therefore it's not a big opportunity anymore, right? So you have to belong. So that's why you have to sort of to put yourself in the environment, get some mentorship of people from that environment, people that have done it, people that you can trust, and they're going to give you the true story, right? The true story that I feel right now is that we are in a difficult time. I think life was rosy before, but we didn't know. Now we're realizing how rosy life was before, and now we are depressed. But the reality is now is a great time to organize. I mean, I told you this was the truth. In this last day of December, Donald Trump put a plus 25% tax on cognac. That moment, between that hour he made that decision, and 10 days ago, until they removed it, my business went flat and obviously minus, like finished. If that kept on going, if this kept going for a year, essentially I would have closed my business. But I didn't think it would go for a year, because I knew that when there's a change of government, they stick it to each other. So I thought this was a normal thing that they do every time. And my guess was that Biden had to have take his time, and he had to put his new government. And the minute he put his new government, 2 days after he put his new government, not 2 weeks, 2 days after, they removed that law. So obviously that was a guess, but that was a guess because I've seen it many times, and I was guessing why Trump was doing it, and I was guessing why Biden was removing it. It's because they had an issue between Boeing and Airbus, nothing to do with cognac. But because cognac, people don't realize that, but something like 20% of the billionaires in France have something to do with cognac. It's a very big industry that comes from a small village, and everybody in the village is like a cousin or a brother and all of this. So it's an industry people keep very secret, and there's several $billion sold from cognac. So what happens is, if you can't negotiate between Airbus and Boeing, you stick it to another one that this one is going to go after the Boeing and Airbus and say, hey, and you won't. This is a discussion between billionaires. It's not a discussion between me and these people. And I know the billionaires, they're going to come and say, hey, we're friends. We belong to the same country club. We do all of these things. We go to the same ski resort. Why is it? And then it happened. Anyway, so that was my guess. But that's my guess because I've seen it time and again. So that's why I said, when you get older, in some way, you are in better shape to be an entrepreneur because you belong longer to the environment. You've been in this environment for a long time, so you can sense better things. But if you think you're going to make decisions based on your senses and you're smart and you have a good instinct, that's not good. You need to be modest and seek research and make decisions based also on research. So the entrepreneurial process is first to decide to become an entrepreneur, then to develop some business ideas, but then moving from this idea to become focused on entrepreneurial activities, and then manage and grow this entrepreneurial firm. So the advantage of an entrepreneurial firm is that you constantly focus on being innovative and serving the needs of a customer. Here's an example of firm that was entrepreneurial, Cliff Bar. So if you look in the back, it says, Cliff Bar is named after my father, Clifford, my childhood hero and companion throughout the Sierra Nevada mountains. In 1990, I lived in a garage with my dog, skis, climbing gear, bicycle, and 2 trumpets. The inspiration to create an energy bar occurred during a day-long 175-mile ride with my buddy, Jay. We'd been gnawing on some other energy bars. Suddenly, despite my anger, I couldn't take another bite. That's the moment I now call the epiphany. 2 years later, after countless hours in mom's kitchen, Cliff Bar became a reality, and the mission to create a better tasting energy bar was accomplished. Cliff Bar has grown since 1990, and still the spirit of adventure that began on the ride continues to thrive each day. As the company evolves, we face many choices, yet we always do our best to take care of our people, our community, and the environment. So you can see it's very much summarizing the idea that he was passionate about outdoor mountain activities. He was tired of the options that was given to him. He found some just noticeable difference. And he said, you know what? I don't know about cooking. I don't know about energy bar, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to learn and I'm going to create it. And after countless hours of working and convincing people, then this became a very successful energy bar company that I think we all know. So that's the idea of an entrepreneur. Here's another one. I think Shobani is everyone knows as well. It was immigrants in the US that was eating yogurt and he couldn't find any good yogurts. And then he tried to see why all the yogurts were not as good as he thought they should be. And he discovered because the people making yogurts were using bad milk. And so he said, why do they use bad milk? They use bad milk because people don't say anything. So he says, but are there people like me that would want a yogurt with good milk? And um, he found that there were lots of people that wanted good milk like him, good milk yogurts. Then he started making a yogurt with good milk, and he became very successful in a very short amount of time, to the point that now he's creating different flavors, and now he's even creating other type of presentation and for different targets. So he's done market, the new product development, then he's got market penetration, then he's got more new product development, and then he's got market development. And so it's this idea that you have to develop and that you have to grow. Instead of using a big company that you all know, he works also as a small company. Um, this is the owner of one liquor store. There's thousands of liquor stores in Los Angeles. And I met him, and he was just another liquor store, but he's actually a very successful liquor store. He came from Syria, and he came to the US with very little money, and he put all of this money in this ownership of that liquor store with a number of family members. And he heard about this concept of craft beer. And so then he started selling one craft beer, two craft beer, three craft beer. But then he found that it was La Bodega. This is the last liquor store before you go to Big Bear or Lake Arrowhead. And he said, based on my position, I'm going to advertise that I have all of these craft beers. And so he advertised this. And then people found him on apps, on Google Maps, and all of this. And so they went, before they went to the mountains, they would stop at his liquor store to get craft beers. Eventually, it became the store that had the most variety of craft beer. And then he started putting signs about craft beers all over the place there. And he was explaining that to me. He said, it's very simple business. All you have to do is see what you have, see what you don't have, see what people want, find your just noticeable difference, see what your competitors are doing, and do things and take chances and try things and adjust as you go along. And eventually you learn to do it better than you were doing before. So that's, to me, is a true entrepreneur that has just one interest is to increase sales. I think that's another thing that I find very interesting in successful entrepreneurs is they care for sales. They worry about sales. They are not just focusing on sales, but the true measurement, one of the true measurements to look at a company is, do they make profit and do they make sales? And you can see there's a lot of businesses that are worth a lot and they don't make much profit and they don't make much sales, but they're very much worth a lot of money in the stock exchange. And that sometimes worry me because they're sort of questionable businesses. So his business was successful because he focused on sales, he was focused on customer satisfaction, he was focused on understanding the environment. the ecosystem of his environment. People drive this direction, people go to the mountains, people who go to the mountains, they want the cheapest beer. People who go to the mountain, they want the most expensive beer. So I'm gonna have both the cheapest and the most expensive, and I'm gonna cultivate that until I find my positioning, my target. And I mean, he knew nothing of the words that I'm telling you right now. He doesn't know what's a target. He doesn't know what's a positioning. He doesn't know that he's actually being entrepreneurial. He doesn't know all of these things. He just does it instinctively because he's sort of gets this kind of sense into him. So the entrepreneurial process is multiple steps. Is first recognizing some opportunities and then creating some ideas and working between opportunities and ideas. Then analyzing if it's feasible. I mean, do we have the resources? Do we have the market? Is it growing right now? What are the trends? Then you write a business plan. And remember, a business plan is a plan with multiple plans inside. Then looking at the competitors and looking at the trends, the government, essentially your macro environment. And then moving into from the idea to becoming an entrepreneurial firm where you have to think about the legal aspects, looking at where you're going to find the money, then creating a team, and then founding the project through different stages of development of your company, and then growing your company, scaling your company, and that becomes a different ball game, scaling your company, but it's still the role of the entrepreneurs to scale their company. What business has affected you, your purchase in the past few days? Any business that you can think of that you did something different?
Is that a question? Is that a question
Yes, it's a
or
question.
Apple and Avid for me? I don't know about anybody else.
How so? How did they affect you recently?
Oh well, Apple with the new M chip and Avid with the new Ultimate Pro Tools and the downtime. Like I gotta wait and use another product, my old computer, because this M chip is waiting for the third for Avid to catch up.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so it's kind of like with the M chip and with Big Sur, my Intel computer with my Pro Tools on it works. With the M chip, it don't work. So I'm like, I gotta wait. So that's the effect it's had on me. I had to kind of like all day restore, my old Pro Tools, go find an old version to so I can continue working. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's really annoying because that's
it is.
something that happens often when you start having problems or when you start upgrading. Sometimes you discover,
Upgrade.
yeah, you discover that that has made something obsolete in your system. So yeah, that is very, very.
Right, and then you contact the company because I said the question was what purchase. So you contact Avid, and they're telling you that okay, yes, it will. We're working on the solution for that problem, but you got to wait like a couple of months. So
Yeah, well,
it is frustrating, but the purchase is still worth it, though.
yeah. That's another thing. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to expect the road to be rocky, and it's just a question of just taking one problem after another. If you don't do anything, you don't have a software problem, right? But if
Well, for me, uh, uh, um, the purchase is an investment for the future. I mean, all of these Apple products are going to move to that M chip eventually. So I'm already maxed out on my Intel, my Tower, all that good stuff. So it's not like I broke it down. It's just that I still have a system that I can work on, but the new system I was excited about
yeah,
actually jumping on that faster speed, faster workflow, and I got to stay in, you know,
yeah,
uh,
current.
stay current.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's true. So technology does that. It's suddenly it's paradigm shift, and then it's new features and new expectations, and therefore you have this what's called this ideal state that makes the actual state irrelevant, and then you have to step up. And so yeah, that happens. Some issues that you find, yeah, something, you have a punctured tire, I need a new tire, and then do I know about tire? No. And then you look for tires, and then you find there's too many choices. And so yeah, things are that way. And when you're an entrepreneur, I mentioned one thing that's very important is confidence. And so this issue of confidence is, if you decide to be an entrepreneur, you have to decide to hear people to say no. And people are going to say no. And you need to, you know this from the beginning. And so you can't hear the no's and think that means you need to stop. No and stop are two different things. And so no just mean go to the next person. No just means go to the next person. That doesn't mean stop. So people oftentimes interpret this as I try to be an entrepreneur. It's not try, is I will be an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. Therefore, no is not stop. And so I have this, no, I don't want to bring religion to you, but I thought this was interesting that in the Bible it says, so I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks, receive, he who seeks, find, and to him who knocks, the door will be opened. And that's the best advice I give to an entrepreneur is, it's not easy, but if you don't do it, nothing is going to happen. And if you do it, just expect it's not going to work the way you plan, but that's the way it is. And so you just keep on going, and no doesn't mean stop. And there you go. So a business plan is therefore a plan that is made of all the different functions of the businesses. So if you do a business plan, you have to do a legal plan, an accounting plan, a marketing plan, operation plan, and all this. I mentioned about this. So what is marketing? Marketing is the delivery of customer satisfaction at profit and long term. So when you're in marketing, you worry about satisfaction and you worry about the long term. Can you create things, needs? No. You can make people buy things, but you can't create needs. Needs already exist. So you articulate needs into wants. What makes consumer motivated to take actions is they feel that there is a need. They want it. You can make people want things and you just serve their needs. So what do you look for? You look for making decisions. Marketing decision is based on this environment, the threats and opportunities. And so you navigate between what your competitors do, what your consumer wants, where do you find solution in the environment. All the environment is a mine for opportunities. So inside this environment, you find your opportunities, your strengths, weaknesses, threats, and you look inside the pest analysis in order to identify some of those macro elements, the political, economical, social, and technological. All of this, again, is this concept of SWOT. So that's the first thing that you need to do is, first is, what is the ID? Why is this ID going to work? It is going to work because we're going to have these resources. Right now, we don't have them, but we're going to find an investor for these resources. It's based on that opportunity, on this set of opportunities. These opportunities are macro opportunities, micro opportunities. When you look at what we're good at, what the market wants, and what the threats are, you can find this just noticeable difference. But success is not so obvious as Schopenhauer, which I mentioned, we heard back in the previous class, is it's not that simple. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Boo, bah, no, I don't want it. Doesn't exist. Second, it is violently opposed. And then third, it's accepted as self-evident. So there's a lot of these in our environment. And I wanted to bring two examples. La Légende des siècles by Victor Hugo. So Victor Hugo is a very famous author, and he wrote a lot of books. Most of his books are very thick, and one of them is The Legend of the Centuries. And so The Legend of the Centuries is actually one of the most famous book of Victor Hugo. When he came with this book, it took him 25 years to write this book. When he came out with this book, everybody said it was horrible, that it was a waste of time, that anybody who has no sense should buy this book and read this book. But if you're smart, you don't read this book. That teased how the critics of the time were talking about Victor Hugo, the legend of centuries, back in 1859. That's how they talked about it. Now, a century and a half after is considered one of, if not the best book of Victor Hugo, and one of, if not the best book written in French. Example two, maybe closer to your heart, probably closer to your heart. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, if not one of the most famous songs, a very famous song. When that song came out, everybody was saying that it's not going to go anywhere. One of the reasons it was 6 minutes and change, and people said the radio only wants 2 minutes and change. Nobody's going to take a 6 minute song, so it's a waste of time. And it's based on some theme of the opera. Nobody likes the opera. So this is a recipe for failure. Well, now 50 years after, everybody said this is such a good song. It's the best song. Everybody loves it, and so forth. So it's very, 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 very common that something that was made with a true entrepreneurial spirit comes out as something that is very different from the rest, is booed and looked down, when in fact a few years after it becomes a major success, and then people said, oh, I knew all about it, I always loved it, I knew it was going to be great from the first day. Balonies. Most people are negative, and it takes a strong leader to actually bring this to fruition, because nose is what you're going to hear at the beginning. I mean, Lance Pierre was talking about Apple. When Apple came out with a smartphone, nobody wanted it. Apple spent several years trying to sell the smartphone, and people didn't like it because there was no touch buttons on the phone. They wanted a touch button. They were looking for the button. They thought it was stupid to touch on a glass screen, and that nobody would ever want that. And anyway, you couldn't even close the phone. There was one side, there was nothing, and another side was the phone. It was ridiculous. So the phone took several years before it became successful. Now it's the norm. So entrepreneurs are the people that create the new norm. But between the old norm and the new norm, there's a lot of negatives. And that's what I wanted to say, because the world is changing. Here's the list of the best toys, the favorite toys for kids in 1913. Candy, nuts, rocking horse, doll, mittens, toy train, oranges, books, handkerchief, skates. 2013, Furby Boon, Texta Robots, Lipad, Ultra, Flying Fairy, Bug, Uggs, Elmo, Barbie, Dream House, Giggly Monkey, Nerf Gun, Ninja Turtles, and Lego. So almost nothing is the same. The world is changing, and people are changing their mind. And it's the job of an entrepreneur to change people's mind. That's why it's so difficult. Try changing people's mind. That's the job of an entrepreneur. Crocs was the same. Everybody thought it was stupid, yet became a big success because people found some solution. Technology is doing what we just discussed, making things obsolete. The environment, things change. I mean, if you 5 years ago you wear a mask in the street, everybody would looked at you. Now it's normal, it's expected. It even became some kind of fashion statements. I saw this ad now, it pops everywhere. It's Manscaped, the idea of man shaving and the different accessories that you can buy um, as as a man in order to shave. I remember when I was a student, I went to my first bachelor, which was a marketing bachelor, and we had an exam, and the exam was about Gillette. And when we looked at Gillette, it was at the time it was Gillette Sensor 1, and essentially I think we were supposed to create Gillette Sensor 2 or Gillette Sensor Turbo or Gillette Sensor XL, which was the next product, which is that you were supposed to say that the best solution was to add a third blade. There was two blades on the Gillette. What's the new Gillette? A Gillette with a third blade. Instead, I wrote a paper on making a gilet for women. So that was in 1991. And I got, what did I get? I think I got a C plus or something like that. Because they say, why in the world would you want to make a shaver for women? And so the professor said, no sense. Women don't need a shaver. 1991, I almost failed the exam. I was too much future forward, I guess. And so you have to live in your environment and you have to adapt to your environment. This is weather tech. And so they have all kinds of products to protect the car. And now they're selling other products to help you stay healthy and safe.